it's my extreme pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Micah Mossman, who's the founder and CEO of Puyo Business Solutions. Now, Micah has more than 20 years of experience as a senior leader in the defense and intelligence communities. While serving in government, Micah led planning, programming, budgeting, and execution of the DoD Intelligence Information System, or DOTIS, that enterprise, where he oversaw IT services and shifting budget cycles during a time of shared service transformation. Micah holds a Bachelor's of Science in Aeronautical Engineering from the United States Air Force Academy, a Master of Science in Systems Engineering for the Air Force Institute of Technology, and an MBA from Colorado University. Micah is PMP, IDOL certified, and Change Management Advanced Practitioner. I did get a preview of Micah's charts last week, and I think you're going to find them fascinating. So let's welcome Micah to the stage.
Good morning, Virginia Tech. Wow, what an impressive and imposing hall. Thank you, Jay Winkler, Luke Williams, Dean Sarker. This is an amazing event. How data analytics makes achieving the intelligence mission possible. So what exactly are we going to talk about today? And what is intelligence? Clearly, it's described with perfect accuracy in Hollywood in movies about Jason Bourne, James Bond. And today, we'll use data analytics to pinpoint the precise locations of the United States nuclear arsenal. We'll also teach you how to hack into pacemakers, and we'll use data to tell you who killed JFK. Yeah, unfortunately, we're not going to go there. Why? Frankly, I have no freaking idea. I am the last person with the need to know for that kind of information. If I haven't disappointed you enough, I need to let you know that we're going to go a mile wide, but we're only going to go an inch deep, and that is for two reasons. One, every agency does things differently, and I'm not in any position to speak on behalf of the entire community. Two, the moment we get too close to sources and methods, I run the risk of my clearance and my employment being yanked. So if anyone came here to really hear who killed JFK, I'll give you a second to clear out so you're not disappointed. My name is Micah Mossman. I am the CEO for Puyo, a government contracting company that primarily supports the intelligence community. Prior to forming Puyo, I served as the Chief Financial Officer for the Department of Defense Intelligence Information Systems. I served in numerous roles in industry, supporting most intelligence agencies. I was a military intelligence officer, and I teach at the Johns Hopkins University Whiting School of Engineering for a master's program of national security cohorts. So I have been blessed to observe the impact that data analysis is having on the intelligence mission from multiple perspectives. And I can tell you, we are living in exciting times. There is 65,000 times more data in the intel community today than there was in 2014. We're just scratching the surface with capabilities of AI and ML, and we're welcoming a workforce of data experts. So the potential is limitless. But what happens when under unusual atmospheric conditions, and AI monitoring systems visioning algorithms misinterpret the glare of the rising sun for a series of rocket launches, setting off a catastrophic chain of military response events? It is critical that we apply the capabilities of data analysis responsibly. Also, intelligence professionals serve in thankless roles. It's not every day that someone wakes up and says, wow, nothing bad happened last night. I still have my freedoms. I need to thank an intel professional. But the moment something goes wrong, everybody's looking to place blame. On top of that, our adversaries are increasingly creative, persistent, and intent on doing us harm. For these reasons, we rely on data analysis to keep our country safe. Today, we're going to describe 4 use cases and how data analysis is impacting the intelligence mission. But before doing so, I think it's important that we establish just a general foundation of what the intelligence community is. It is comprised of 18 organizations. You may recognize some of the more common ones like the CIA, the FBI, and the defense agencies. But you might be surprised to see Department of Treasury, Department of Energy. Each of these organizations play a critical role in our national security. Listed here are some of the primary intelligence functions which we'll talk through today. HUMINT, intelligence derived through human sources. We're going to spend a fair amount of time elaborating on this one because it is undergoing a major transformation, and we'll talk about it in our use cases. So what is HUMINT? There are lots of varieties, but let's describe a day in the life. Imagine that you're in a foreign country, you lost your passport, so you have to go to the embassy to get a new one. You go to the embassy, Marines guide you through the gate. A security guard walks you through a metal detector. A receptionist at the information desk points you to the passport office. You charge up on some coffee, take a number, wait all day, finally get your passport issue resolved by the passport agent. Go back to your hotel, wrap up your day. But for one or more of the individuals that you passed in that embassy, their cover job is ending, but their collection job is just beginning. Maybe it's the Marine, the security guard, the barista, the receptionist, or the passport agent. They wrap up their cover job, they go back, access secure intelligence systems, and read up on record message traffic. That's like intelligence news. They want to be sure that they're current on all of the information surrounding their upcoming mission. Let's say it's the barista. She scours her notes, she defines her mission objectives, she dons attire that is familiar to her asset. She spent years recruiting this asset, first striking up a friendship, building a common ideology against a particular regime, before convincing that asset to share just limited amounts of information in exchange for visas and safe transport for his family to an allied nation. She approaches the rendezvous point 3 hours early, surveils the area, wants to be sure that everything's okay, nothing's out of sorts. She's afraid, less about what could happen to her. In all likelihood, if she's caught, she'll return back in US custody, but more concerned about what could happen to her asset. She studies the area, she looks at the merchant in the area and wonders, is he staring at me for too long? She sees the boy playing soccer and wonders, did he subtly gesture in my direction? Her nerves are all over the place. The moment comes for the meetup, and he doesn't show. 3 minutes later, still not there. 5, 10, 30. She's afraid. Was she unclear in her meetup time and location? Did her asset have a change of heart? Or did something worse happen to him? Finally, she sees him approaching from 100 yards. She copiously takes notes. What's he wearing? Are there any blemishes? Does he look injured? Is he wearing a new watch? Is there any interaction along the way that I need to make note of? When they finally come face to face, this begins the mad minute. It's 60 seconds frenzy of excitement, fear, all rolled into one. She wants to jump right into her mission objective, but she practices proper tradecraft and doesn't. She does the first and most important thing. That is to establish the meetup time and location for the next engagement, so that if, God forbid, they get broken up or something happens, she has another opportunity to engage. So she does this. Now she wants to jump into her mission and gather the information. But again, she doesn't. She practices proper tradecraft. She reestablishes that rapport. She rekindles that friendship, asking about his family, making him feel comfortable. With that out of the way, she finally satisfies her mission objective. She returns to the embassy with her information, process it into secure intelligence databases for distribution across the entire community. Manages to get just a few hours of sleep before starting her job as a barista at the US Embassy the next day. Not quite the theater that you might expect from Hollywood, but hopefully sharing a little bit of a glimpse of a day in the life for a human collector. Again, this is undergoing a major transformation, which is why we're spending a little bit more time on this. SIGINT, intelligence derived through signatures, intercept and decipher. Think the National Security Agency. MASINT, intelligence derived through measurement and signatures. This may be the physical characteristics, quantitative and qualitative, of things like chemical, biological, radioactive, nuclear, and electromagnetic. This is a primary responsibility of the Defense Intelligence Agency. IMINT, intelligence derived through imagery, which is often combined with GEOINT, intelligence derived through geospatial means, both primary responsibilities of the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. And last but not least, OSINT, intelligence derived through open sources. This may be social media, it may be terrorist propaganda, academic papers, patents, any number of different sources to include conferences just like today. And this is dramatically changing the world of intelligence. So our use cases are going to revolve around this as well today. Each of these individual intelligence disciplines produce information that is of limited value. But when combined, it forms a mosaic that provides remarkable views into how our adversaries and subjects operate, how they think, their capabilities, and so much more. This collection is called all-source analysis. Intelligence is not new. It's been around since our country was formed. It has evolved as technologies and modalities evolve. When George Washington crossed the Delaware River, he did so because human intelligence told him that there were British troops on the other side. When we were in the World War, with the rise of transmission and cables, signals intelligence gave rise. Cracking the Nazi Enigma machine was a huge component to winning the World War. With overhead aircraft providing very granular pictures, the Vietnam War relied heavily on IMINT. When the Soviet Union put Sputnik into space, and for the first time, both America and the Soviet Union had persistent overhead satellite imagery, that gave way to GeoINT. And today, with the explosion of social media, with every device producing information that can be analyzed, and with the use of drones that are now providing rich imagery, OSINT is something that is very, very popular in our Intel community. These organizations and these disciplines help us to satisfy the intelligence mission, and that is to provide timely, rigorous, apolitical, and insightful intelligence and support to inform national security decisions and protect our nation and its interests. Now, as we talk about data analysis as it relates to the intelligence community, we generally bucket it into three categories. We have, on one hand, big data, hyperanalytics, huge volume sets, highly structured activities, generally low-risk activities. Think conditioning data, perhaps automating routine functions to build analytic capacity. On the other end of the spectrum, we have human microanalytics, much fewer data sets, very reliant on the human, for the human's expert, the human's opinion. Much less structured activities and much higher risk, think interrogations. Where I would argue we spend the vast majority of our time and attention is in the middle, in blended analytics. Still large sets of data, but requiring human validation for semi-structured problems, things like collection targeting. That is the intelligence community in about 10 minutes. So we'll jump right into the use cases. Use case one, data modeling for information security. So have any of you ever been to the International Spy Museum in Washington, D.C.? See a few hands. Wonderful for historical purposes. And I'm not trying to dog it, but I gotta say I was a little bit underwhelmed when I went. I saw an exhibit just like this, and it says, does this look like just a suitcase? You might be surprised to know that there's actually a hidden listening device inside it. Are you freaking kidding me? Look at the size of that thing. So, I'm gonna digress for just a second. Several years back, we sent some intel officers overseas. They declared themselves as intelligence officers, so they were there overtly. When they arrived to the host nation, got to their hotel, they were lucky to be graciously greeted with a welcome basket, to include an iPad. How convenient, right? Our intel officers communicating on their devices. They know a heck of a lot better than that, so they take those devices, tuck them away in the closet, turn off the battery, make sure the microphone and camera is in no way to observe. They go about their day. They arrive to a secure location. When they do so, they check their cell phones, check their laptops and lockers, make sure they're not bringing in any electric devices, go in, have a sensitive conversation. Come back to the hotel, and their key doesn't work. So they go down to the front desk, get a new key. The next day, same deal. They arrive to a secure location, check their cell phone, check their laptop, make sure they have no electronic devices, go and engage in a very sensitive conversation. Come back to the hotel, and again, key doesn't work. After the third day of this happening, they decided they should raise it to counterintelligence professionals, who identified a new listening device, the hotel key card, embedded so small that the battery life could only last for 24 hours and needed to be replaced every day, yet tucked comfortably in their wallets and brought into those sensitive conversations. Across the intelligence community apparatus, there are thousands of points of vulnerability between agency locations, SCIFs, mobile flyaway kits, soldiers, embassies, the list goes on and on and on. Intelligence is predicated on the fact that it can be trusted. In some instances, though, information breaches come from within. That is why, when human resources onboard staff to many intelligence agencies, we subject them to polygraphs. A polygraph measures perspiration, respiration, and cardiovascular signals, in a nutshell. The premise is that higher signals indicate deception. But there's enormous room for variability. First, in the administration of the exam. So think the subject of the investigation, the polygrapher, the test structure. And second, in the individual. Think about the many different physical profiles, age, sex, health, and so much more. So to reduce this variability and be more precise and accurate, our statisticians at Johns Hopkins University worked with the intelligence community to develop automated classification algorithms that group someone as generally deceptive or non-deceptive. They did so using the power of data analysis, applying logistic regression, applying neural networks. They also looked at more than raw data and considered derivative data, looking at latency between responses, time to reach certain physical thresholds. And since then, the polygraph has become much more accurate. So data analysis saved the day. Anyone who takes a polygraph can be trusted, right? In 2013, Edward Snowden leaked a tranche of classified information, relaying the US efforts to collect on citizens, describing the inner workings of the NSA, and summarizing collection activities against United States allies. He passed the polygraph. In 2017, NSA translator Reality Winner felt compelled to share with the world Russia's efforts to interfere with the US presidential election. She passed the polygraph. Anna Montes, 17-year senior analyst at the Defense Intelligence Agency, spied for the Cuban government the whole time. She passed the polygraph. So there's a lot of room to improve. We've realized a lot of improvements already, but models can be made more sophisticated, more accurate, and we rely upon data analysis to do that. There's a long way to go. Use case 2, data analysis for source identification. In 2023, a young man on a Discord gaming forum called Thug Shaker Central found himself embattled in a heated debate about the war in Ukraine and the status of it. To prove his point, he released over 300 highly classified documents about Ukraine, Russia, China, North Korea, South Korea, and so many other sensitive topics. We needed to find this individual quickly before he could release more information because he did so anonymously. So we formed a tiger team of cyber, IT, and data professionals to track down the leaker. It was quite literally looking for a needle in a haystack. This is a gross oversimplification of the analysis that we performed. There were 4.2 million users with access to cleared information. We used trends, patterns, and correlations to distill that group down to 1.3 million who had access to that specific information based upon the metadata, the classification markings, headers and footers of the documents that were released. We looked at anomalous behavior and understood who had the particular user rights for that information, brought that down to 100,000 users. We then forecasted with probability estimates the likely area that the information was taken from. That was Fort Bragg, North Carolina. That brought it down to 300 users. We then revisited anomalous behavior, looking at it in a much more qualitative way, considering things like who was printing large sets of information late in the evening when no one else was around. That brought it down to one single individual. The results of our analysis helped to form the warrant that led to his arrest. Jack Teixeira now serves 16 years in prison. What's important to note about this approach is that there's no single tool. It's not like we ran it into a ChatGPT and said, tell us who's the leaker. It required people who understood data, who knew various methods, and could work with other experts from IT and cyber worlds. And that's what we're increasingly seeing in blended analytics execution in the intelligence community. Use case 3, open source data aggregation for intelligence efficiency. So let's revisit that human collector scenario I described. And let's imagine that she was trying to get from her asset a single picture of a Russian transport system. Think about the cost associated with that. For us to deploy someone overseas, provide the food, logistics, security, everything necessary. And then think about the risk to her, to the asset, to diplomatic relations. What if we could get that same image, instead of that human collect, through social media? And in addition to that image, it came with rich metadata. showing a time stat, location, data chronology, and so much more. Conversations that ensue that provide additional context. Now, what if it wasn't just one image, but 10, hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands? This is where the world of open source intelligence is operating today. We design web scraping scripts, point it to specific sources, tune it to specific subjects, that may be aircraft, tanks, troops, etc. Make sure that we filter out according to the authorities that we have, that we're not monitoring and collecting on things that we shouldn't be. Suck all that data up, put it in an AI visioning tool, and now all of a sudden we have troop movement. We can place specific number and capabilities of tanks and other weaponry with precise accuracy and for fractions of what it would typically cost to use humans to collect this information. We applied this same approach to understand Russia's invasion of Ukraine. In 2014, we saw a large motorcycle gang rolling into the peninsula. This motorcycle gang was setting up checkpoints, moving food, water, and supplies, and even occupying strategic locations. In an effort to understand what was going on and who this was, we applied the same approach because they were happy to post to social media. Gathering all that information and data, ran it through facial recognition tools, some of the same technologies that teens play with today, and identified that the leader of this motorcycle gang was Alexander Solzhenitsyn, close confidant of Kremlin boss Vladimir Putin. The same occurred when little green men showed up in the peninsula, without insignia, without identifying themselves as Russian soldiers. But they would post to social media. Babushkas in their apartments would take pictures and say, I don't know who these soldiers are, but they're not Ukrainian. We ran the same approach, gathered that information, analyzed it, and were able to convincingly demonstrate that these were in fact Russian soldiers. This was critical because it was a geopolitical challenge at the time for the United States to tell Russia to stop invading when Vladimir Putin denied any involvement in doing so. This is where the world of intelligence is headed. It is hugely predicated upon data analysis. We need people who can understand the tools, the methods, the techniques, and how to apply it to keep our country safe. Use case 4, compelling action with the data story. In October 6, 1973, then Secretary of State Henry Kissinger was made aware by the Israelis that war had broken out with Egypt and Syria. Infuriated, he asked his staff why they had not made him aware ahead of time. To which his staff replied, sir, we did in fact make you aware through multiple reports. While he acknowledged that they reported, he refuted their claims and said, yes, you reported, but you failed to compel. And that is a critical aspect of intelligence. Beyond applying data and analyzing data, we need to understand how to communicate a compelling story to different audiences, different presidents who may consume data in different ways. Another example where we failed to compel were the presidential daily briefs leading up to the events of 9/11. This section, bin Laden determined to strike in the US, is on the 3rd page of the president's brief. Even within this section, its first paragraph describes Al-Qaeda. The second paragraph uses basically subjective data to provide a confidence level. Only in the 3rd paragraph of the 3rd page do we describe a clear and present threat from someone who has done it before and has a terror network within the United States capable of doing it again. But it's not all bad stories. There are some good instances of compelling with data. This chart shows Napoleon's march onto Russia and his retreat. In this single chart, it effectively shows the troop size. You can see it whittling down from 450,000 to approximately 10,000. It shows the time, the temperature, and the direction that they were headed. One of the best statistical charts of all time, produced almost 200 years ago. This is another good example of compelling with the data story. Soviet military power. This document very effectively applied infographics. It juxtaposed Russian weaponry, showing the range and damage that it could inflict, and eventually became declassified. It was published in countless foreign languages, and the results were that citizens overwhelmed congressional offices, insisting that they take the Soviet threat seriously. What you see here is called a placemat. This is one type of way that we produce intelligence information. There are lots of different ways that we feed that information. sometimes machine to machine, sometimes in targeting packages for pilots. But this is a very common one called placemats. We also produce intelligence longs. They're good summaries, reports. You can find a lot of these if they've been declassified on agency websites, and you can see for yourself if you think we're compelling with the data story. We produce intelligence shorts, 3 pages, basically who, what, when, where, why. We produce tabloids, very small, 1 question, 1 answer. But across all of these mediums, it's critical that we can apply, read, write, and communicate the data story. That is something that is increasingly missed as we treat data too much as a science, too much as a math function, and less about compelling humans. Before I wrap up, I'd like to share some unsolicited career advice surrounding security clearances. Just at a quick high level, there are generally 3 levels of clearances: confidential, secret, and top secret. There are other flavors, but these are the 3 general levels, with top secret being the most restrictive. Being the most restrictive, it opens up the most employment opportunities for you. When I was a young military officer and my squadron commander told me to fill out my paperwork to apply for security clearance, I had zero appreciation for the many career opportunities that it would result in. I don't believe I would ever have served as the CFO for a government agency if I didn't have my security clearance. My business partner, Greg Palmetry, he was busted coming across the Mexican border with a pound of marijuana. And he was given 2 options by the judge: go to jail or join the Marines. He did the latter, got a security clearance, and has had a highly decorated career as CTO, CIO, and other senior roles within the government organizations. It can sometimes take a year or so to get your clearance, so it doesn't hurt if you're interested to try to get nominated, try to get sponsored, and get through the process so that you have those opportunities. I also want to note that the intelligence mission is not all about analysis. It's not all about collection. It's an entire enterprise that has almost every function you can think of: social media, budgeting, HR, so many different roles that are well beyond the tip of the spear, but that are necessary for our intelligence mission to function. If you are interested, there's a few pitfalls that I'd like to put on your radar. First is financial irresponsibility. The government considers financial irresponsibility as a big red flag for a couple of reasons. One is because it can create leverage. Someone can bribe you for access to classified information. 2, because they consider financial responsibility reflective of your overall responsibility. Can you be trusted with our nation's secrets? The use of hard drugs. There's a lot of conversation unfolding at the federal level about marijuana, but hard and illicit drugs, depending upon when, duration, can be challenging to achieve a security clearance. Whatever the skeletons in your closet, it's important to avoid any inconsistencies. When you fill out your application, if they realize anything inconsistent about what you reported, when they investigate your friends, neighbors, coworkers, peers, people that you don't want them to talk to, that could be damning to your security clearance. Lastly, what you make public is fair game. I grew up in Hawaii. I'm part Hawaiian. A lot of my friends, family, and cousins don't want Hawaii to be a part of the United States. They're sovereign. If I were to ever on social media advocate or imply that I am in support of a violent withdrawal from the United States, that could certainly be damning to my security clearance. So that wraps up my use cases and my presentation. I hope that you got a little bit of context surrounding how data analysis applies in very real ways to the intelligence community. I hope you understand a little bit more about what the intelligence community is, and I'd like to just put a little pitch in there that each of you are data experts, or at least data curious, by virtue of you being in this room. And in the direction that the intelligence community is headed away from human and towards OSINT, heavily reliant on data capabilities, you can provide a disproportionate impact to the intelligence mission. Thank you. I hope you stay in touch. Please reach to me on LinkedIn. Appreciate the opportunity to be here today.